Hello, welcome back to the NOTCAST. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these. I have been busy. I think it's number 387. I think it's the 3rd of June 2024. Could be the 2nd. Don't really remember. All the days kind of blur into one after the first few thousand days. And I've been pretty busy, so I haven't done one of these for a couple of weeks on the grounds that between 26th of April and 31st of May, I've been to 11 gigs. And I've been working, and I've been pretty poorly, and I have been on holiday as well for a week. So I've been away from keyboard, as they say, AFK. And so I saw Jim Bob in Margate, Catherine Joseph in Ramsgate, Orbital at the Troxy, Editors at Brixton, Frank Turner in Birmingham, The Wedding Present in Wolverhampton, Cranes in London. Hang on, and then it was quiet. And then I saw Jane's Addiction in London, Pet Shop Boys at Coco, Knights of Ebb at the Fabric in London, and Bernard Butler at Rough Trade East. So that's 11 shows. Good God, I was quite tired by the end of it. That means I haven't really had the time to sit down and do one of these, because I do the NOTCASTs when I'm not doing other stuff. And if I have to choose between you, my lovely YouTube people, and the real world, sorry, real world's going to win, I'm afraid. Don't take it personally, please. It's not worth it. Today, I am talking about Morrissey's 4th or 5th solo album, depending upon your point of view. I count Bone and Drag as an album. So Viva Hate, Bone and Drag, Kill Uncle, Your Arsenal. And that makes 5 for Vauxhall and I. I think it's a fabulous album, by the way, before we get too far into the episode. And yes, going to be talking about this. I'm also going to be talking about the Boxers period, because that kind of leads into what happened next, and feels like it's a continuation of the era. So Vauxhall and I, released in March 1994, the 5th solo record by the Morrisseys. And although it was scheduled for release in November 1993, it was delayed to March, came out in March 1993. And March 1994. 1993 was quite a big year. Obviously, Beethoven's Death was released in the summer. The Smiths' back catalogue had been sold to Warner Brothers, which came out with Best 1 and 2. And according to Morrissey's autobiography here, the amount of money they got for the Smiths' back catalogue was £750,000 or something. And then there was a lot of reissues that came out after that. This, of course, is one of the essential texts if you want to understand Morrissey, because it's his story in his own words. And as he describes it, 1993, where life was an endless succession of people saying goodbye. So, for example, we have sections where in 1993 alone, Tim Broad, who did most of the videos, died. Nigel Thomas, the business manager, died. Mick Ronson, the producer of Your Arsenal, died. And he signed a £1 million merchandise deal with Giant Merchandising, who then, of course, asked for the money back because Morrissey didn't tour. And although the Nigel Thomas got his percentage, Morrissey had to pay back the $4 million, so effectively that cost him £250,000 or something. The final act of Nigel's wizardry was an impressive deal with Giant, who handed over $1 million in return for the use of my never-ready smile. After Nigel died, Giant sued for return of the outstanding sum, and I was dragged without resistance to the Supreme Court in Los Angeles, where the money paid over was restored. Any plate would do. It felt to me to return the entire amount, even though $250,000 had gone to Nigel for management commission, and $58,000 had been paid to my London lawyer. You wouldn't take money from a grieving family, my accountant gasped. But I'm grieving, I reply, and wherever I turn, the trap widens. There's a little bit of victim mentality in some of that. In fact, you'll see a fair chunk of victim mentality throughout all of this. A man besieged by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. But that's hardly the best way to start your year, is it? To find out that you have to pay back $1 million, and in fact signing an advance for $1 million ends up costing you $308,000 for merchandising. So we go into the period of the recording of Vauxhall and I with a couple of changes in the band lineup, recorded between the 1st of June 1993 and the 31st of August 1993. This is, in my opinion, probably Morrissey's finest solo record. It's absolutely magnificent in every way, shape and form, and debuted a new lineup. So when I think Boz and Alan turned up to the studio, they found that the lineup had changed a little bit. Gary and Spencer, the bass player and drummer, were no longer required and had been exited from the group, replaced by, as far as I can tell, Johnny Bridgewood on bass, who's a very good bass player, and Woody Taylor on drums, the two that played on Pregnant for the Last Time. So there was a change of atmosphere when you come in, as is often the way. You come into a situation and it's not quite what you thought it was, even though, and this is a little strange, the Top of the Pops appearance for the first single released from the album, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, I think that still features Gary and Spencer on drums. Well, Gary on bass, Gary Day and Spen on drums, which makes you think, what's going on here? That's a little strange. Well, everything's a little strange. Is it really so strange after all? The album is the first record which has co-writes from Boz Boron. So Boz co-wrote, amongst other things, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, and I'd Love To, the two of the three tracks on this particular single, The More You Ignore Me. And Vauxhall And I sold very, very well. So it got to number 1 in the UK, number 8 in the US, and did very well indeed, including a huge burst or jump, I think, in his popularity and reputation. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Right, that's done. Wasn't expecting to do a sneeze, but there you are. All of these are filmed video verite. So the only in-camera edits are the pauses, which I put in when I know I'm going to sneeze or need to take an emergency drink, which I thought I just did, but I don't. So there was an atmosphere which Morrissey described as the end of rain for the album, a mournful kind of elegy, a goodbye to the previous 10 years. Now, the theory is, there's a theory that the first 10 years of any artist's career are the best 10 years. So if you want to think about, for example, lots of bands and their set lists, lots of their material comes from the first 10 years. For The Cure, for example, almost everything they play is between 1979 and 1989. For who else? Depeche Mode. A lot of it comes from what they call their golden era between 1986 and 1996. A lot of the Manics set lists are between 1991 and 2001, with maybe a quarter from the previous 25 years. Other bands, Pet Shop Boys, I saw them recently, absolutely phenomenal. More than 2/3 of the set came from the first 10 years of their recording career, easily. Metallica seem to be trading on exactly the 1983 to 1993 period. Oops, there was a yawn. It's been a long day. So you could understand that there was maybe a sense of the advance of time as the hammer slams down in Withnail and I. It's an album that is besieged by mortality, that casts a long shadow over everything that's inside the record, and takes a very distinct view of the passing of history and nostalgia for a form of Britain that didn't necessarily exist. There was a lot of violence in the album, in the lyrics. Morrissey had started a relationship with someone called Jake Walters, I believe, who is addressed in the UK paperback version of Autobiography, but I think a lot of the information is redacted for the American edition of Autobiography. Effectively, in the UK edition, there are extra lines, sentences, paragraphs, and information that make it quite clear that the two, if not a couple, had become extremely close. And although that relationship was never openly declared in such a fashion, it appears to have been a romantic one. It may not have been, I don't know. But the US edition of the paperback is redacted and features a number of omissions. So if you want to get the full version of Autobiography, you have to go for the UK paperback, not the US version. And that fed in a little bit into some of the lyrics that are in the album. So this is the first album where really it feels very much like it's kind of looking backwards a little bit, even down to the name of a single, Hold On To Your Friends, here in the limited numbered 7-inch edition, backed with a cover of Moon River, which, if I recall correctly, Moon River was sung at my parents' wedding. The one of the songs, alongside The Impossible Dream, was Moon River from, I think, is it Breakfast at Tiffany's? I think, might be, might not be, not quite sure, but it was a number one in 1961. But I'm leaning into the B-sides already, and I haven't even mentioned Withnail and I. So Vauxhall and I and Withnail and I is not uncoincidental. It really isn't, in the same way that your Arsenal works on 3 levels. The name of your Arsenal, your arse and all. Your Arsenal about the football club, and your Arsenal about the weapons. An arsenal of words which Morrissey was kind of like, issuing forth to people. Withnail and I also works on multiple levels, one of which is Withnail and I, and Vauxhall and I are closely related. Vauxhall and I being the finest cult film known to humanity, according to the back here. In fact, in a little bit of personal information, I watched Withnail and I with an ex of mine when we weren't exes, and she was from Oklahoma, and she watched the film and said, "It's not funny." At which point I should have realised we're doomed, as C-3PO said. So I think Withnail and I is probably the test for my relationships. If you like Withnail and I, it could happen. But people that I've been in relationships with that haven't liked Withnail and I, it hasn't happened. So there you go. That's your barometer. It's the Withnail and I test. It's up there with the 2 beers and a puppy rule for politicians. But Withnail and I, in case you haven't seen it, is a film about 2 struggling thespians in London trying to be famous in the world of performing arts and theatre in the 60s, and they appear to have gone on holiday by mistake. It is a magnificent, quotable film, and I love it dearly, although none of the characters are particularly likeable, I think, or at least certainly some of them aren't. Vauxhall and I obviously has a quote from Withnail and I kind of built into it, but also at the same point, Vauxhall is a part of London that has a couple of scene pubs, which kind of suggests towards a slightly different outsider perspective to the world. A couple of taverns and a couple of other places, certainly at the time. So not necessarily a particular part of the world where you would go necessarily, but certainly not unassociated with being different and an outsider, I think it's fair to say. So Vauxhall and I, the 5th solo record, absolutely magnificent. And whilst we look at the original CD, which I have here from 1994, you will see that the font is slightly different, the colouring is slightly different. And yes, the back cover is different because Morrissey always changes his cover art. And luckily he hasn't futzed with the sequence of this particular record, but he has changed the cover and the back cover particularly. I think this is a photograph of Jake's hands on Morrissey, which is not used for the reissue. And as an album, it's the first album which has co-writes from Boz on there as well as Alan. So there's a kind of a battle for supremacy between the 2 writers, both of whom, by the way, are very, very good. Boz wrote Now My Heart Is Full, Spring Hill Gym, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, Lifeguard Sleeping, and I think Speedway. And Alan wrote Belly Bud, Hold On To Your Friends, Why Don't You Find Out For Yourself, I Am Hated For Loving, Used to Be a Sweet Boy, and Lazy Sunbathers. So for the first time, both the performers were writing. And it's an important part of the story because Boz became Morrissey's longest standing guitarist, who worked with him for a total of 30 years between 1991 and 2011. And co-wrote a huge number of songs. Alan, by the way, has the biggest number of co-writes of anybody with Morrissey at 84, which I think is more than Johnny Marr, who wrote, I think, 78 songs with him, just in case any of you were wondering. And if you weren't, don't worry, interesting material will be dubbed in later on. So Vauxhall and I opened, or started with, and was proceeded with the single The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get. And where have I put the CD single of that? Hang on, I need to go and find it. And The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, wherever I've stuck it. Hang on, I'm going to go and put it on pause, and I'm going to have a look for a missing bit of hot dead media. There it is. So, yeah, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, the first single released from the album. 3-track CD. I did have the 12-inch with a poster, but I sold it because who knew? Who thinks vinyl's going to come back? Of course it bloody well isn't. What a ridiculous concept that's going to be. So the 3-track single got pretty high in the charts. Top of the Pops appearance with Gary and Spencer in the lineup. And was, in my opinion, an absolute classic that should be played at almost every Morrissey show. The lyrics foretell the future, and how one can't escape the past. The idea of, I will be at the bar with my head upon the bar, and around the idea that bear more grudges than lonely high court judges. A lyric that would probably come back to haunt him in future, actually, alongside what feels like a kind of threatening, almost seductive take upon something like Every Breath You Take, which, by the way, Every Breath You Take's the song by the absolutely visible Police. Yes, Sting, I Hate Your Guts, is this is a song which makes the idea of having someone take an interest in you sound a lot more appealing. The lyric is, here I am now a central part of your mind's landscape, whether you care or do not, I've made up your mind. And when you sleep, I will creep into your thoughts like a bad debt that you can't pay. Take the easy way and give in. So that's an interesting lyric. Part of it is around, I think, fame and notoriety. The idea of being that if you're famous and well known, you exist in people's lives whether they like it or not, and that you exist in people's lives whether you know it or not. So, for example, and don't think less of me for this, I had a dream about Taylor Swift the other day. Yes, Mark. And then the next question was it a sex dream? No, it was a dream that I had come out from a bar and she was playing a gig very near, and the whole of the cities were just besieged with a swamp of Swifties. And that's a great thing. I love that music has a meaning to people and still means a lot to people. I just wasn't expecting to have that in my dream. So I exist in your mind whether you care or do not. Morrissey exists in people's minds, and the version of him that exists in some people's minds isn't the same as the version of him that is real. And then you've got the idea of going, well, how much of Morrissey as a public figure is an accurate and fair representation of who he is? How much of that is who he really is, and how much is it of a character called Morrissey? And then you kind of get into the area where I think, what's her name, Lorraine Kelly, was trying to say that actually when she was presenting TV shows, she was pretending to be a nice human being called Lorraine Kelly, but she isn't actually a nice human being, or whatever the argument was to try and get her out of paying tax. Can't remember if that was successful or not. Very interesting idea to take. So in fact, I'm not real. I'm an avatar that exists in your mind. You have ideas about who I am, how tall I am, and how sarcastic I am. Very. And that is not necessarily who I am. There's other versions of me, or as a Pet Shop Boys sang, too many people. There's a different version of us that exists in the mind of absolutely everybody else. Some people see us just as professionals who are experts in particular areas. Other people see us as just people that go to gigs or collect football programs, or I don't collect football programs, or as to cats, I'm just merely a food dispenser, for example. And to other people, I'm a bad memory, that they're someone that they wish they'd never met because of, we kissed and they didn't like it. Whatever, I kissed a boy and I didn't like it, as the song goes. It's all that kind of thing. And that idea is, and I think the more you ignore me, the closer I get, it kind of alludes to that. It's an element of going, well, actually, the version of me that exists is not the version of me that is real, but a version that exists in your mind, and you don't want necessarily me to exist. Okay, that's a bit navel-gazing, but it's interesting. Now, two things about the recording of The More You Ignore Me. One of which actually is that the bass line descends at the end rather than ascends. So it plays against the current and standard expectations that you've got. So the end of the song, the bass line goes down instead of going up as the song reaches to a climax, which is very cheeky. Good work by Johnny there, by the way. And the second thing about it is that, as far as most people were concerned, because the musicians weren't credited on the record, at least not that I can think of, nobody had really known that the lineup had changed. So as far as everyone was concerned, and the Top of the Pops appearance for the same way, is that Gary and Spencer were still part of the group. And in fact, if I look on the back, it's only when you look on the back of the LP and it tells you on the CD Johnny Bridgewood on bass and Woody Taylor on drums, that you'll know that the lineup has actually changed. Album was produced by Steve Lillywhite, who also produced U2 and I think Simple Minds and Kirsty MacColl and a whole bunch of other people. And despite its success, there was no tour for Vauxhall and I. Madison Square Garden was announced but sold and then cancelled, and then there were no other shows until 1995 with what became the Boxer tour on the back of the single Boxers. So the album itself, and bearing in mind I've spent 20 minutes, I've only talked about really the album and the opening single. The album itself opens with Now My Heart Is Full. This is one of my absolute favourite songs by Morrissey, the Smiths, or anybody, actually. It is a magnificent song released as a CD single in America. The live version of it, especially the version played in the year 2000 with the acoustic opening that then leads into the full band intro about halfway through. Absolutely amazing, beautiful, stunning. The equal of the Smiths at their very finest, by the way. It is a song that mentions copiously, many times, the characters from Brighton Rock, this fabulous film starring Richard Attenborough. And Brighton Rock is a film that I saw at the cinema, and I think Richard Attenborough came out and did a chat afterwards. I think the BFI in London. This is one of the best films ever made. The idea of British cinema, a decaying seaside town, the idea of belonging in a gang, belonging in a group, the idea of finding somewhere that you belong and then it being undone by the circumstances of reality around you. It's a magnificent film. And in the album, where Morrissey sings Hello Spicer, Pinky Cubit, loafing oafs, all night chemists, underact and express depression, but oh Bunny, I loved you. Those four names are the names of the people, the gang in Brighton Rock, and the whole of the album, as I said, nostalgically kind of ties to the concept of a lost Britain, the idea of, and it's steeped in history, a London that no longer exists, a Brighton that no longer exists, even down to the mention of Vauxhall. It's a very provincial British album that came out right in the midst of and the start of the top wave of Britpop. So around about this time, Definitely Maybe was coming out, or Cigarettes and Alcohol, Shaker Maker, Supersonic. Kurt Cobain was just about coming to the end of his life. Girls and Boys had yet to penetrate the mainstream, but was just there bubbling under. And suddenly this new British wave of fantastic music, Suede, of course, Pulp with Babies, and leading into His and Hers, Morrissey. It was all starting to come together and roll over to kind of like replace and sweep away grunge, which is very interesting because this was recorded obviously August 1993, the summer of it, a concept of simultaneous discovery that exists in society. The idea that, and if you watch Deep Impact and Armageddon, for example, if you've thought about the invention of electricity and Tesla, all those things about where two people working separately reach roughly the same conclusion at roughly the same time. And that is what was happening, is that these bands were operating separately, different from each other, and they were all at the same point feeling the same way about things. They were kind of going, no longer did they look to Los Angeles for the language to use. No longer was London dead, because London was the name of the city that the title of the next album was in. It's an important step to take. And Now My Heart Is Full is easily one of the best Morrissey songs of all time. All time. I absolutely adore it. It's a song that still makes me have feelings in built-up areas. There's a line about, everyone will recline on the analyst's couch quite soon. The idea that everybody in every family, there's that quote, isn't there? I can't remember who said it. All families are happy in the same way, but unhappy in different ways. And then there's that idea that every family is unhappy in a different way. And then there's the lyric around there's going to be some trouble. A whole house will need rebuilding, and everyone I love in the house will recline on an analyst's couch quite soon. It's about a dysfunctional family that doesn't quite work, that is a little bit wrong, a little bit broken. And sometimes the idea of going, tell all my friends I don't have some money, just don't have too many, just some rain-coated lovers, brothers. Dallow Spicer, Pinky Cubit, Patrick Doonan, every jammy Stressford poet. But all of those, it's like the idea of going, actually, my friends are imaginary. My friends live in films. My friends live in books. And yeah, as you've probably worked out, I regard some of my records as some of my best friends because they've always been there. If my life is an endless succession of people saying goodbye, then these records are ones that have never deserted me, never lied to me, never cheated or deceived me. Although perhaps that time when Slayer said they were splitting up and then got back together. All those 4 times Orbital said they were splitting up and then got back together. Yeah, maybe they did actually. Oops, quick, change the subject. And it's a joyous track actually. It soars. Morrissey has never sang so well, actually. It's chilling, but it's joyous. It's scary, but it's relaxed. And it's about leaving behind the past and going towards the future. And the idea of going, for example, and I just can't explain, so I won't even try to, working on an instinctual level that's beyond intellect around feelings and emotions and how those work. Now, from a technical level, there are 2 bits of information about this song, much like The More You Ignore Me, that are interesting. The first one is that the bass from the demo was kept. So the bass was kept, although it was re-recorded. They chose the version of the bass that was on the original demo, which I think was written by Boz. I should know that. So that's Boz on demos on the bass. But the drum machine on the demo was replaced. So you have a kind of Franken song a little bit. But sometimes the demos are so good, you don't need to re-record them. Or depending upon which band you are, if you're Napalm Death or The Wedding Present, your demos are just pill sessions. You get paid to do them. So if you want to think about those 2 bands, Napalm Death, I fucking love Napalm Death. Napalm Death and The Wedding Present. If you want to hear what their demos sound like, just listen to the Bill Sessions albums and you can get a chance to hear all of those. The second track on the album is Spring Hill Jim, which takes its name from Spring Hill Jack. And Spring Hill Jack was a creature of instinct and hedonism, recklessness. He was, I think, like a mythological creature of the supernatural with a deadly bent. And the idea of Spring Hill Jim being someone similar to that, like a figure that works in or is associated with a gang that has criminal undertones around it. And the song explores identity, masculinity, the version of England that never really exist. And the idea about the lyric of he'll never be done to, and he takes on whoever flew through, whether it's the normal thing to do. And it's a song about violence, kissing, masculinity, recklessness, assertion, and around kind of seizing that moment and basically being a lad's lad, I think is probably the way to look at it. It was the second track that was recorded for the album. The first one was Billy Budd. It was the second track recorded from the album, and it has samples from a 1959 documentary called We Are the Lambeth Boys. And I think We Are Lambeth Boys was also provided a cover shot for one of the Smiths' obscure German releases, possibly Ask or Panic or something like that. But this time they licensed the sound and the audio from the BFI and put it into the song. So the whole of the album has references to versions of Britain that no longer exist. The idea of pulling back to Brighton Rock in the first song, samples from We Are Lambeth Boys in the second song, and then other songs like Whatever Happens I Love You and Have a Go Merchant. All these type of songs that kind of touch upon existing inside a gang, a place where you feel like you belong, not even a place where you fit in, because fitting in and belonging are 2 very separate things, but somewhere where you belong, somewhere that feels like home. And home is a feeling, it's not a location. So it's an album that's very much around searching for and finding a sense of belonging in the world. The idea of, as the boy in the form with his side goes, is, where'd you go and who'd you know and la 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 la, all that type of stuff. Sorry, forgotten that one. Billy Budd, the third song, was the first one that was recorded from the albums. And it takes its name from a Herman Melville story of innocence corrupted by evil. The opening lyric, or very important lyric, is "Things have been bad, but it's now 12 years on since I took up with you, and I took my job application to town, and did you hear, they turned me down." The idea being is that 12 years before the recording of this album, 1981, 1982, Morrissey met Johnny Marr. I don't think it's a coincidence that he says 12 years, and the idea of going, well, it's been 12 years since I met you, and it's had the idea of being, people have an idea in their minds, the idea of, if you look at Corey Feldman now, for example, he was old, no disrespect to you, Corey, it's better than being dead, but the idea of going, in our mind, the version of Corey Feldman that exists is the version that was in the Goonies and the Lost Boys, and is 30, 40 years out of date. The idea being that the version of Morrissey that exists in lots of people's minds is the version that only existed 30, 40 years ago. And the idea of going, it's been 12 years since I took up with you, and how that has made people turn my job application down, and it's all because of you. The idea of going, well, I can't measure up to the impossible expectations or version of me that doesn't exist, but only existed in people's minds. And that is why, in much the same way as I joke about Lars Ulrich, and I say Lars Ulrich's biggest enemy is the drummer he used to be, the biggest enemy that perhaps would be in this album would be the version of Morrissey that exists in people's minds, and not the version of Morrissey that was real at the time. But it's a great song, works well live, opened I think every show on the Boxers tour in 1995. I saw 2 shows on that tour. Absolutely magnificent shows. Really, really love them. And then track 4 is the second single released from the album. This one didn't do as well as The More You Ignore Me, because I think The More You Ignore Me got to, I think, number 8 in the UK charts. The next single, Hold On To Your Friends, this one didn't do so well, to quote Frank Turner. This, Hold On To Your Friends, got to number 42 in the charts, despite coming in a gatefold sleeve. Oh, look, there's a man showing his very lovely sex chest and his numbered. So this is 6,838, although the number could go up to 99,000. Something tells me they weren't going to do 99,000 of this. Here's the original 7-inch. That's number 8,513. I'm not sure quite how or why they would number it, but then they did do a limited edition of a Paul McCartney album that went up to 500,000, which was the Russian covers record in 1991. But Hold On To Your Friends is, in my opinion, it's a good song, maybe not single material, but a good song. But it didn't sell. And it didn't sell because it was already on the album. It wasn't a great song in so much as it's good, but it's not very commercial. It doesn't sound like a single. And it's backed with just one song, Moon River, and that's a cover version, which is available in a 3-minute edit on here, or an extended version on your 12-inch single. Hold On To Your Friends kind of alludes to the concept that's in the rest of the records, the idea of that friends don't last, they absolutely don't, and there's a lyric about, why waste good time fighting the people you like who would fall defending your name, don't be ashamed to have friends. And then that lyric about, now you only call me when you're feeling depressed, when you feel happy, I'm so far from your mind. My loyalty is vexed. You're losing all of your friends. Sure, some of that could be him singing to his audience. He's going, don't forget me. You only call me when you're feeling depressed. Now that you as an audience have aged and moved on in life, don't forget that I exist. I'm still here. Which is also revisited in Papa Jack later on 1997's Maladjusted, and my life is an endless succession of people saying goodbye. And, going further back into history, Panic, of course, about an artist's relationship to his audience and the audience's relationship to the artist, and do they need each other, and how does that work? And Hold On To Your Friends is in my opinion, a song about having a friendship with a faraway object, about having a friendship with a record, a movie, where, as I've said earlier, everyone leaves in the end. All friendships wither and change and transform, and the nature of fame and the version of fame that exists in people's minds, and then the idea that, the version of Morrissey that exists in your mind as a listener, viewer, watcher, lover, someone with a Morrissey tattoo or not, or maybe replacing it with, I don't know, Kate Perry tattoo or something, as the cliche goes, and then you kind of go, the idea that Morrissey's got a chest and nipples and chest hair and armpit hair, and it's like, no, that's not the Morrissey we know. Morrissey exists just as this disembodied head and an intellect that can never ever kiss anybody or anything. Kind of going, no, there's more to me than that. It's a good song, really good song, really like it. But it's not necessarily a hit single. I think maybe perhaps as a choice of single it wasn't the best one, is the nice way of putting it. But I really like it as a song. It just doesn't scream single to me. Now My Heart Is Full absolutely does instead. And then, of course, we've got The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, which, as I said, got to number 8 in the UK charts. I talked about 15 minutes ago. Let's not go back to that. Turning the album over, side 2. Well, side 2 is Why Don't You Find Out For Yourself. Here is, as you can probably tell, this is the 2014 vinyl repressing of the album, because I wasn't buying vinyl in 1993, or more correctly, I was, but not for everybody. And so therefore we've got the slightly different label design, inner sleeve and corner of the gatefold, etc. I did actually have a huge standee of Morrissey from the cover of this. It was something like 4 foot by 4 foot, made out of corrugated cardboard, that went into the window of Rockaboom Records in Leicester. And I didn't keep it. And I don't know why I didn't keep it. Probably because I didn't need the bloody space, truth be told. Probably is the reason. And so, Why Don't You Find Out For Yourself is one of Morrissey's moaning about the record company songs. There are quite a lot of those. They include Paint a Vulgar Picture, and Sorrow Will Come For You in the End, where it's effectively just a litany of complaints against people that have wronged him. Some of those wrongs are real, and some of those reals are wrong, and so some of those aren't real either. So the idea of going, the sanest days are mad, why don't you find out for yourself? I've been stabbed in the back so many times, I don't even have any skin left. But that's just the way it goes. And you just sit there laughing about it. It's a fabulous lyric. It's funny, it's dark, it's painful in so much as going, well, we've all been betrayed by somebody. Although some people take this betrayal more personally than others. The lyric is, some men here have a special interest in your career. They want to help you grow and then siphon all your dough. And they know the full extent of your distress. They kneel and pray and they say, long may it last. It's a lyric that's very clear about going, in the days when you were hopelessly poor, I just liked you more. Calling back to these common themes which come all the way through it, the treachery of record companies that insert themselves in the relationship between the artist and the audience, merely as a distribution conduit. No more important, most record companies, than the lead pipe that brings the water to you, without which it would be impossible, I think, but at the same point, adding nothing but a mere technical ability into the process. So I think Why Don't You Find Out For Yourself was re-recorded because the first version of it that was recorded was quite glammy, quite rocky, apparently sounded too similar to Your Arsenal. I think that version was scheduled to be released on the cancelled 2004 reissue of Vauxhall And I. Alongside, I think, or maybe it was an acoustic version of it that was scheduled to be on there. But it's well worth tracking down if you can find it. And then we have I Am Hated For Loving. Now, first and foremost, 27 songs by Smiths and the Morrissey start with the letter I, or the word I. I won't share you. I am hated for loving. I am born, or whatever it's called. All their 27 songs, I won't share you is one. I know it's over. All of them, 27 songs starting with the word I. By the way, House of Love's debut album, and Kate, if you're watching this, you will like this. The word I is mentioned something like 109 times in that record. The man is self-obsessed on that album, saying the word I at least 10 times per song on the debut record, whereas Morrissey has only started approximately 10% of all of his songs with the words I am, I was, etc. Much like Jude Law at the end of AI. Kish. I Am Hated for Loving, the original version was inspired by The Clash, and although you may not necessarily know it, there's a huge Clash influence in the writing of Alan White, the big kind of chunky guitars, the chunky riffs, and you can hear things like, Safe European Home, or I Fought the Law and the Law Won, in the sound of things like Your Arsenal. There's this punky, spiky edge which runs through the song, and even though I Am Hated for Loving has that dialed down to sound more maudlin, more middle-aged, not middle-aged, but less aggressive, more introspective, it's still there, and you can hear it in there. But it was re-recorded to fit in with the concept of the rest of the album. And then we have Lifeguard Sleeping, Girl Drowning, nice cheery Morrissey song titles that we have come to know and loathe, or love, depending on your point of view. Lifeguard Sleeping is a dark lyric. Morrissey has never sung so tenderly. In fact, if you listen to the whole of the album, the studio album, the way that he sings through those lyrics is very understated, very low key. I wouldn't be surprised if the key went up for the live performances. Certainly Speedway was originally recorded in E, for example, and then moved to, I think, F sharp. Because of the vocals and the way in which the vocals needed to be presented. But by changing the keys of the songs and the production and the guitars that the songs were played on, it became less aggressive and became more mournful and more introspective. Lifeguard Sleeping also features the debut of Boz on clarinet, so not just a pretty face and not just a great guitarist or a good singer. There are many instruments in the man's arsenal, and we will hear more of them in future. We also had almost a continuation of, or a revisit of, some of the themes that were in the song Lifeguard on Duty, which I think is a B-side from the Viva Hate era, which wasn't released until much later, when we got to going through the dregs of the B-sides for the Glamorous Glue and Famous International Playboys reissues of around 2010, 2011. Used to Be a Sweet Boy, one of the last tracks on the album, track 9, was inspired by his parents' separation at the age of 17. And the idea of, breaking up the family unit, revisiting some of the concepts which are first addressed in Now My Heart Is Full, about your father cracks a joke and in the usual way empties the room. Divorce runs through the album. Separation runs through the album. The death of Tim, Nigel, Mick, the separation of his parents, the moving to London, the idea of trying to find a gang, resetting one's life. These are all themes that run all through the record. And then in the lyrics, he used to be a sweet boy, holding so tightly to daddy's hand, but that was all in some distant land. A big, bright, healthy smile used to make all of our trials worthwhile. But something went wrong, and I know I can't be to blame. Of course, Morrissey thinks that everything is somebody else's fault and not his fault. That's a whole different conversation. But with Vauxhall and I, it's laid pretty clearly out there on the floor. And then we have Lazy Sunbather, which, oddly enough, I was listening to this album today, and the idea of a world war being announced days ago, but they didn't know the lazy sunbathers, and the sun burns through to the planet's core, and it isn't enough, they want more. The idea being, no matter how bad life is, or no matter how fucked up things are, you want to get drunk, you want to sit in the sun, you want to have a pina colada at the Club Tropicana, where music and passion are always in fashion, all those type of things. And nothing appears to be between the ears of the lazy sunbathers, too jaded to question stagnation. Religions fall, children shelled. That's all very well, but would you please keep the noise down low, because you're waking the lazy sunbathers. Thinking about some of the horrible wars that are happening in the world at the moment, I'm thinking specifically about Ukraine and Gaza. There are still people that will sit on a beach and think about well, isn't this nice? Everything is okay in the world, even though it isn't. And obviously, you have to have a degree of separation, a degree of isolation from yourself and other people. Otherwise, you'd feel the pain of absolutely everyone else. And I guarantee you that today is going to be the worst day of somebody's life. And today, no matter what day you're watching this, is going to be the last day of somebody's life. But also, you have to live in the moment. And, to quote the Cookie Monster, and right now the moment is cookies. So there's a time and a place for everything, and of course, a time and a place to be miserable now. Last track on the album is Speedway. I love Speedway. It's wonderful. I've seen it played live many, many times. Always brings the house down. Closed every show or every main set on the Boxers tour. And I think it's written about, Speedway is clearly written about the Enemy articles about Morrissey in 1992, the allusions to racism, where he's brandishing a flag on stage at Finsbury Park, and all that other activity that goes with it. And the idea of saying, well, actually, all of the rumours that keep me grounded, I never said that they were completely unfounded. And you won't sleep until the earth that wants me finally has me, until the hearse that becomes me finally takes me. And you won't smile until my loving mouth is shut good and proper forever. The idea of responding to willful misinterpretations of imagery which, yes, skirts the boundaries of certain concepts which perhaps at the time weren't particularly popular, but at the same point is saying, well, shit sells, and you've done it to sell papers. You've not done it because necessarily it's an authentic position or one that you necessarily believe. It's one because you think that that's what's going to help you sell copies of The Enemy and The Melody Maker. I use The Enemy, I Am Anarchy, for example. And so that closes the album. As I said, Speedway was originally recorded in E, and then it was moved to F sharp. The drums were recorded in the dining room of Hook End Studios in Reading, which I think is for sale for 12.5 million Earth pounds at the moment, if that's what you want to spend the money on. And I've seen it end a number of shows. So I saw 2 shows on the Boxers tour in 1995. Now I could go in to talk about Boxers, but I think 50 minutes is plenty of time, and I think we do Boxers next time round when I also talk about the Southpaw Grammar album. Because even though some of the recordings were made around about then, there is one last release from this period, a song that's recently been reissued, and that song is Interlude, a duet with Susie without her lovely Banshees. And again, I have the 7-inch of Interlude here, an original 1994 7-inch. This is a cover version, and I can't remember who wrote it. George Delarue and Hal Shaper on this was originally the duet with Susie of the Banshees, who I love and have been asked to do an album by album review of the Banshees, but I'm not sure I can do that yet. It came out on 7-inch CD. The CD featured an instrumental version that was only 7.5 minutes long, a standard version that was 3.5 minutes, and an extended version that was 5 minutes. And also, about a month ago, got a release in a new coloured sleeve on gold vinyl for Record Store Day 2024 on its 30th anniversary. Magnificent cover. Actually, I love it. It is powerful. It's soft. It's lovely. It's. I just really like the song Interlude. Although there isn't, by the way, of course, a video for Interlude, because the video was going to feature, I think, or was originally planned to feature Susie throwing stones and things at Morrissey, or maybe chucking water at him, and he didn't really feel in the mood for it. It's a glorious song. I really like it. Never been performed live by either party, but worked absolutely gloriously as a mid-album single. And if you needed to get Interlude on vinyl, by the way, the most commonly available version for many years was on The Very Best of Morrissey, released in 2011. It's a previously unreleased version on this album. It features just the Morrissey vocal. It doesn't feature the Susie vocal at all. That brings Vauxhall and I to a close. Next time around, I'm going to do Boxers, Southpaw Grammar, and I am going to talk about the Boxers tour. But before we get any further, one last thing to show you is the Your Arsenal 20th anniversary reissue. This is effectively a 2 CD version of the vinyl that I've just shown you. It features a previously unreleased live performance from London's Drury Lane on the 26th of February 1995 on this disc, I believe. And I was at this show. So this is one of the 3 or 4 live shows from Morrissey that have been released that I was present at. This was a brilliant gig, and I'm so glad that it's been released. But I'll talk about that when we get to boxes. But if you do buy Vauxhall and I, and you're going, well, I only want the CD, I only want one version of it, go for this. It has both the audio from the original 1994 album and the live show from London Drury Lane in February 1995. And on the grounds of it being included in the Your Arsenal reissue, I therefore now regard Boxers and the Boxers tour as part of the Your Arsenal period. But that is going to push us up to the limit of time, and that will then be in the next episode. I talk about Morrissey, where I talk about Southpaw Grammar. So in the meantime, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you for watching it, making it to the end, and for the comments that you put in my YouTube. I read them all, and I respond to them, but responding to them takes like about 10 seconds of me going, yes, that's brilliant, I am handsome, as opposed to me thinking about making one of these. And when I do one of these NOTCASTs, I spend hours. I listen to the album multiple times, I read the books, I read the interviews, I do the research. I don't always get it right. Apparently I hate Guns N' Roses because I got the recording date of You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory wrong. Well, who fucking cares? At the end of the day, I'm not an academic. This is a dude in front of his phone talking about the records he loves with a bit of paper that tells him all the things. I have to cover up that bit because that bit's all about Boxers. So this 50 minutes has only taken this part of it. And what I've not mentioned so far is the lyrical preoccupation of the entire of Vauxhall and I. Vauxhall and I is an album not just obsessed with violence, not just obsessed with identity, masculinity, a lost England, belonging, a gang. It also has a lot of violence in the lyrics. So if you get your lyric booklets out for the album, they're not on this vinyl edition. We have a lot of violent lyrics to look forward to, which of course then leads into the next release, which is Boxers. And those violence include children bombed, skulls hammered in, sailors dying, swimming fatally, skin cancer, brickbats being stabbed in the back, and generally lots of unpleasant activity. The only thing that isn't in there in terms of violence is Boxers. That's in the next episode. So hold on, and I will get to that one shortly. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, as Jerry Springer said. Stay beautiful, beautiful ones. If you like, then please subscribe. If you don't like, don't. It's quite all right. We're doing fine without you. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. And I will see you, hopefully, in a few days. I'll try not to leave it so long next time, which of course means it's going to be about a year until my next upload. All right, so see you later, and stay beautiful. Bye.